mouth-watering cookies and a luscious tort combine to satisfy your sweet tooth. So please stay with us on Enie's Kitchen as we make some delicious desserts. Shalom and welcome. I'm Eenie Frost, and as you can see, I'm cooking in this absolutely beautiful kitchen. Isn't it really? Everything in here is so convenient. Should I tell you, if I even open up this front drawer, all of the spices are set in special ways. Every drawer, the mix master is set in. This is a kitchen that anybody would dream about. And thank you so much to our host and hostess for inviting us to come in and cook here today. And I'm going to be making some wonderful desserts from a cookbook called Beautiful Buffets. And when I looked through the book, I said, Cookie Stagman, you as the author have really done some fantastic things. And she is going to be my guest. She's going to come over here in a few moments and bake some of her specialties. And as I looked through the book, I saw these lace cookies. You know, if you've ever made lace cookies, it's a very difficult thing to make. In most recipes, you must take it off of the pan immediately, and then they crack or they roll or something. But Cookie has a unique recipe where you make them and allow them to set on the pan for about 10 minutes, and then you'll see how easily they'll come off. It's a fun recipe, and I think that you'll like them. This is what you do. We're going to take a large bowl, and first, it's going to use oatmeal. And of course, we're big on oatmeal and all of these oat products today, right? We have a cup and 2 tablespoons of oatmeal, and we have a half a cup of sugar. And then we're going to add to that a tablespoon of flour. And here we have, the sugar is a half a cup plus 2 tablespoons. And here is a teaspoon of baking powder. And here we have 4 tablespoons of slivered almonds. And I have to tell you, this is a real treat. I had a problem with my husband. Every time I turned around, Jack was trying a few of those on the side. He said he just wanted to check them out. But can you see what a wonderful consistency this gives it? Now, this is the dry ingredients that all will be blended together. And this is going to give it this texture. Added to this, we're going to melt a half a cup of either butter or margarine. Either one will work out just fine. And then we're going to add to that 1 egg. And of course, when we do that, we always crack our eggs first into our egg checker to be sure that it's acceptable according to the laws of kashrut. Because if there were any blood in this, it would not be allowed. It would show that there was some life beginning. So if our egg is all right, we will carefully add that and blend it in to this very, very nice batter. Now, you'll have to admit that that's one of the easiest batters we've ever put together. And on the pan, I'm using parchment. This is a wonderful thing to bake with. Look how easily this works out. Now, in order to measure them, but I must tell you in advance, lace cookies are not even in size. But that's all right. That's the fun of them. They're not supposed to be. That's the good part. So you must leave quite a bit of room when you do this. Here we're going to put them about 1 teaspoonful will be about fine. And I see that really 2 of them at one time is enough because you'll see how they're going to spread out. So we'll put 2, just about 6 or 8 on a cookie sheet on the parchment. Now put this in your oven for about a 350 oven for about 8 minutes. And when you take it out and look at the parchment, how nicely it comes out. I want to tell you that they do not stick at all. Look at how nicely they're coming right up. And you have to be careful because they will break. So watch them carefully. When you take them out, and of course the ones that break, that's where the children come in. So everybody gets a chance. But I must tell you that the recipe makes plenty so that everybody will have enough. Now, if you want to, you can add, you can dip them in chocolate on the sides. That's up to you, but I think it's fun to do that. So what we did here was melt about a cup of semi-sweet chocolate. And of course, what we're doing today is all milk, so that we have used butter and we're using the semi-sweet chocolate that is milk. But you can do it either way. Just take your cookie, dip it into the chocolate, and if you want to put it, maybe halfway across the cookie. And sometimes what I think is fun is to put it on the back. Have you ever tried that? And you'll see if you have it on here, on the parchment, it's going to hold. So put it about halfway down on your cookie, and it should hold very, very nicely. They're wonderful to eat. And having it just halfway on the cookie gives you the opportunity, really, of seeing what it looks like on both sides. Otherwise, you could cover the whole back, but I think it's nice to look through it and get that lacy look. And talking about a lacy look, you're going to see a lacy look on our guest because Cookie is not only into cookies, but she's also into lavender and lace. And she's going to tell you about all the other wonderful things she does. And look at how nice they look once they're finished. And I think that you will enjoy. These are the elegant lace cookies from Beautiful Buffet.
For a copy of Enie's recipes, send a self-addressed stamped envelope to Enie's Kitchen in care of WJUF, 1 South Franklin Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60606. That's Enie's Kitchen, WJUF, 1 South Franklin Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60606. Please include the show number with your recipe request.
My guest is Cookie Stagman. Cookie, you really are a cookie girl. Was that your name, or did you pick it up when you started making all the cookies?
No, that was my name from the time I was a very little girl. In fact, that's the only name I go by.
That's interesting, and you really became a cookie girl. And this wonderful book that you wrote called Beautiful Buffets is really something special. I'm impressed with it because it's so easy to use. You have hardcover, but when you open this up, look at this. How nicely this stays apart by having the spiral in here. That must have been your idea to do
Purposely,
this.
I did it because I do so much cooking that I needed my book to be able to stay open. My hands are always dirty. I'm always in the middle of making something. So it's just easier.
It's really a wonderful book. And I think that one of the things that I was impressed with, and I learned so much about you, is that not only are you into cookies, but there was a whole buffet. What do you do with these? What do you use these for?
Well, 10 and a half years ago, my husband opened up a new business in the Apparel Center in Chicago. And there are 5 markets 5 times a year. And they run 5 times a year. And they run for 5 full days. So I decided our showroom should be different than anyone else's if I bring in food. And I make it very homey. And if I was entertaining at home, I would certainly serve people. So I felt the showroom was an extension of our home. So I started cooking. And one thing led to another, and I created a monster. And I serve from 8:30 in the morning. I start with coffee cakes through 5 o'clock at night. And I serve a full-scale lunch, which can consist of tuna salads and egg salads and different pastas. And
you must have all the designers from the world want to come in and take a look.
They do.
And take a little bite, a little mash with it. But you make such interesting things. You really developed it into things that you can make ahead of time. Can you make most of the things in the book?
I bake 3 days a week from week to week after market ends, and I freeze it. My cooking, my lunches that I serve, I start cooking 2 days before market begins, and I cook all the way through because that's got to be fresh.
Goodness. And then being in a place like that, you have to transport it from your
it
house to the
myself.
Apparel Mart.
Put it in my trunk, put it in my back seat. I make 3 trips down. My desserts go down only a day before market because I'm so afraid everyone's going to do lots of nibbling and I won't have enough for market.
Oh, we know that story all the time. I mean, that's what happened at home, isn't it, when the kids walk in?
Sure, but I serve about 1,500 people within 5 days.
How marvelous.
So when I make an egg salad mold, I make 18 dozen at a time.
Oh, my goodness. Well, we were so excited. Everything I looked to looked so good. And I see that you like to use some of the candy bars.
Oh, I love it. I always leave some extra on the side for myself.
With it. Oh, you see, that's why you use such a big bag of these peanut butter cups. I thought, now why would she need so many?
Oh, I always put a few extras in the freezer.
With it. And I love your name. These cookies are called peanut butter doodles. And I think they're really delicious and fun.
They are fun, and the kids love them as well as my adults.
With it.
So I've been making them every market, and they freeze beautifully.
That's wonderful. Now, how do you freeze them? What do you put them in? Do you
I use metal containers. I use plastic containers. Of lately, I've been even getting from the supermarkets in the salad bar section. They have, and they feel very flimsy, but they're marvelous. Clear plastic containers.
Oh, you use
And
those.
I use them, and I line in between my cookies or my muffins, whatever I'm going to freeze, wax paper.
Oh, see,
And
now
if
that's a
my
good
cookies
idea.
are going to stay in the freezer longer than a month, I put aluminum foil over the whole plastic container.
Yes, that's all right.
They're
Aluminum
fabulous.
foil if you use wax paper, even with things you're cooking, that's really much safer. You know that there is a great deal of oil in some of these wraps and some of these plastic wraps. It's not really so safe to use it exactly on the food. If it's going to be over the container that's already covered, that's something else again. But nowadays, I think we're trying to be a little more careful. Well, let's try the peanut butter doodles. Tell me what you put in them.
Terrific. All right, first I start with, it's such an easy recipe, with a 1 stick of butter or margarine. You can use either.
Either one?
And I'm going to use my Mix Master. I love the Mix Master. I use that in place of
That's interesting. I
Cuisinart.
noticed that you're really into the Mix Master all the way. I think we all started that way when we got married, really? Right? We're the Mix Master people.
That's right.
With it.
Now that the butter is soft, I'm going to add in a 1/2 cup of peanut butter.
Oh, sounds delicious. Love it.
In fact,
With
I'm
it.
going to lift
Almost
this up.
every peanut butter is kosher, but you should look at the sign on it. You know, always watch what you're using.
In fact, I use
most peanut
creamy. You can use crunchy for this also.
The crunchy?
The crunchy comes out just
Oh,
fine,
that'd be
but
kinda
I seem to
interesting.
use creamy all the time.
With it.
So now
Okay.
I'm going to whip it up a little bit more.
With it. So now you have put the butter and the
And
peanut
the
butter
peanut
together.
butter. So I'm mixing that up together.
All right, so that's really creaming those ingredients first before you add your sugars
Right.
in the dry ingredients.
Okay, now that's really enough. Now I'm going to add a 1/2 cup of regular sugar, and I'm going to add it slowly as it's beating.
And your brown sugar, always be sure when you measure it that it's packed in. It really makes a difference when you
That's
measure
right.
your brown sugar.
Now also a 1/2 cup of brown sugar. That's why the recipe is so easy. It's really a 1/2 cup of almost everything.
And now I see you've added a little vanilla to it.
Now I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of vanilla.
All right, and you have both baking powder and
Baking soda. But now I'm going to add my egg, and I'll do the same thing. We'll crack it and make sure that it's fine, which it is. We'll add in the egg.
egg. And now we have, what, 1.5 cups of flour.
A 1.5 cups of flour.
And the dry ingredients will also include how much baking soda and baking powder?
We're using a 1/2 teaspoon of each. A 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking
baking
soda.
soda.
Now, when you put in your flour, do it very slowly because you're going to flour all over your kitchen if you've got it on too high of a speed.
Oh, I think we've all had that happen a few times in our cooking, right? That's all right. And the rest of the flour. All right. And now we're going to have a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. And I think
Okay,
that you
here's
have
my
a wonderful
soda.
system here.
And here is my powder.
And I
And the
see
dough
you
is a wonderful dough to work with. It's not too sticky. It's a very easy dough to work with.
All right. Now I'd like to see how you're going to put them in here. Instead of putting them, baking them in the papers, I notice you bake them in the pans first.
I bake them in the pans first, and I spray everything. In fact, a good tip is I use a tremendous amount of spray. And when I know I'm going to do a tremendous amount of baking that particular day, I will fill sometimes a spray bottle with a vegetable oil.
Okay.
And it'll go a lot further for spraying rather than using the can.
Now this.
All right, this is sprayed. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking
Watch this trick.
a spoon
This is a wonderful
of the dough
trick.
into my mini. It's a mini muffin pan. And I'll
it.
put in a few so you can see.
About a tablespoon, is that? About a tablespoon
about
of the
a
dough?
tablespoon, maybe a little bit less, depending on your muffin
Look
pan.
at how
Some muffin
nice
pans
that dough
are a
is.
little deeper than others, and some are smaller, so you have to do it accordingly.
Now, how are you going
And
to press
I
that
use
in?
a pestle. I use the bottom, the smaller side of it, and I just
What a wonderful idea.
So you
Cookie,
just
that
make
is a
sure-
wonderful idea.
that you get it in,
Look at that.
and it's semi-formed already.
That's a wonderful idea.
And you'll bake it in a 350-degree oven for about 12 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes, until they're like this, lightly browned. And what I do is when they come out of the oven, I end up sticking in my little Reese's peanut butter cups.
Look at it. Those are wonderful.
And if you find that the Reese's peanut butter cups start melting because the dough is warm, then I put them in the refrigerator and I let it just harden a little bit.
And this is
and when
how
it's
they're
done,
going to look.
When it's done, you take it out of your mini pan, your Reese's peanut butter cup is in. I then put it in the papers. And this is what they look like. And these, in fact, are out of the freezer this morning. So they
Those
freeze
are
beautifully. You can
gorgeous.
keep them in the freezer for a couple months and nothing happens to them.
And now we're going to make one of your other special treats that I think is really wonderful. These are called jelly buttons. And I think you need the mix master again, so we'll just change the
Right.
bowl.
We'll change the bowl and
You know, it's good to have an extra bowl. This is a very good thing to do when you have a mix master, and it's not that expensive to have an extra bowl when you're going to make something else.
in fact, this particular mix master came with a second bowl. And I wish it came with a second whisk because we can eat it.
With it. But we'll use
I'm
them
going
all.
to do this and we'll clean this off.
All right.
So I'm ready to begin. This recipe is such an easy recipe, and it's a lot of fun to work with this recipe because it's only a few ingredients. And if you notice, for my cookie sheet, I don't usually
don't
use
think
regular
this is
cookie
locked in.
sheets. I buy oven liners. And oven liners I end up spraying with a vegetable oil also. And the oven liners allow me to put more cookies on at a time because I'm making such quantity that a cookie sheet's never big enough for me. So what I'm going to do is this. As soon as
Here you
this
go.
is okay,
All right, now this is also going into the mix master. And first she's going to start with 1 cup of butter.
right? Or you can use margarine. You can
Right,
use
1
either.
cup of butter. And then we're going to add to that. Oh,
And
got a
what's
little
very
sauce.
unusual with
That's
this
all right.
recipe is I've got hard-boiled egg yolks. And this recipe calls for 2 of them.
That's really an unusual idea.
So I'm going to
Yeah.
whip that up together
All right. And here you have a fourth of a cup of sugar.
of sugar.
That's going to be added into it.
And I do that
And here
slowly.
we have 2 1/4 cups of flour that are going to be added into that. Okay. And then she's going to take that dough and make the jelly, they're like thumbprint cookies a little bit.
They are.
right? They're really
They are,
something
but it has
like
an unusual taste, and I think it's the hard-boiled egg yolks that really...
with it. And she's going to show us really how you put them on here. Do you want to show us how the dough goes on here?
Sure.
All right.
Here.
Okay. And you want to show us how you put the dough on here?
Okay, what I do is I like to put them into cylinders. And it's a very easy dough to work with. I take a cylinder, take a little bit of dough at a time, and I
And put it
roll it
down.
into a cylinder effect.
All right. And then you're going
And
to
what I
put them,
do is
slice them.
I slice them. And I put them on the cookie sheet.
Okay. And now how do you get the thumbprint into it?
Okay, what
Look at how
I use
neat
then...
it is. She does it.
What I use then is, this happens to be a pickle fork, and I use the bottom of it, which has a little spongy end, and it just seems to be the right size. And you can make them
is
much larger
wonderful.
depending on the size of your cylinder. These are very tiny. I like doing a lot of very small, bite-sized desserts because at market time, I've got so many people, they can take several different things on their plate, and they have plenty of room.
And that bakes at 350 for about how long?
About 10 to 12 minutes also, when they're lightly browned.
And here they are.
And you put in jelly. I usually like to use apricot or raspberry.
Thank you, Cookie,
So,
so very much for
can
being
see
with me today. Look
what
at
they
how
look
nice
like.
they look. And when they come out, they're really beautiful. And I hope that you will try them. They're really wonderful. The jelly buttons.
Jelly buttons.
And good luck. Your book is just marvelous
you.
and such a success in the fashion world.
Thank you so
I think
much.
that's beautiful. Thank you for being with me today. Cookie Stagman from Beautiful Buffets.
For a copy of Enie's recipes, send a self-addressed stamped envelope to Enie's Kitchen in care of WJUF, 1 South Franklin Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60606. That's Enie's Kitchen, WJUF, 1 South Franklin Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60606. Please include the show number with your recipe request.
Thank you again to Cookie Stagman for being on the show today. You know, when I looked through the book, I noticed that she has recipes in there from American designers, from all American designers, and that a portion of the profits of this book are going to the Special Olympics. So you can see she's a very special girl involved with many, many things. And when I was looking at it, thinking, what would be an interesting cake to make? Well, if you cook with me all the time, you know that my theme song is Fresh is Best. So how could I resist this wonderful apple cheese tort? And it really is delicious. We're going to start with the crust. In the crust, first we're going to put into our mix master a half a cup of butter or margarine. And mix that through just a little bit. We're going to add about 1/3 of a cup of sugar to that. And then a cup of flour. This is a wonderful basic recipe, and it really works out so well. And of course, I think you're right, Cookie. A little vanilla gives it that little kick. About 1/3 of a teaspoon of vanilla will give it a nice flavor. Now take that dough and press it into a spring form. This is a 9-inch spring form on the bottom and about 1 inch up the sides because the cake is going to be a little high, so you want it to come up the sides a little bit. And then in the middle, we're going to put in an interesting filling. I think that this is very good. You know, there's nothing like cream cheese. I think we're all cream cheesed all the way around. And this one, we're going to use an 8-ounce container of cream cheese. Here we have 8 ounces of cream cheese that we'll put in our mix master, and of course that always blends in very nicely. And with that, we're going to add about 1/3 of a cup of sugar to give it some flavor. And, oh, Cookie, I see you're with me on the cinnamon. I love cinnamon on everything, and I know that this is going to be great. That 1/4 of a teaspoon of cinnamon, and here we have a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. Now, this will be a very nice, creamy kind of a filling, and we're going to put this into our tort because that's going to give it a very nice, creamy feeling. Take it off of your mix master and set it into, and you know, it's even going to turn colors a little bit because we have that creaminess left here, which is very good from the cream cheese and from the cinnamon. And we'll put this into our spring form, and then we're going to top it, of course, with our wonderful apples. And I know that we're going to want to do that because the apples really give it such a good taste. And is there anything better than if you have an apple tree? And if you don't, you should. It's fun to go out, pick them right off of your apple tree, and cut them up. I have about 4 cups of apples. And in here, in order to give this a nice flavor, what I'm going to do is add cinnamon and sugar. And what you should always do with cinnamon and sugar is make your own mixture. You don't have to buy that one in the store. Make your own mixture. Mix it in, and blend it together. And then just set your apples very carefully on your torte. Bake this for about a half an hour, and when it comes out, it's going to look like this. And it really is delicious. You know, I was thinking the other day about some of the very beautiful blessings in the Torah. And I think that this one is one that everybody knows, that's familiar to all of us. We've all heard it, perhaps if you've been, at a confirmation, if you've been to a wedding, it's often used as a benediction, but it's also used in our prayer book. And in the prayers, when we use it, it is in what we call the Amida prayer. It's called the priestly blessing. And it says, "Bless us, O God, with the threefold blessing written in the Torah by Moses and pronounced by Aaron and his descendants." This is a very beautiful prayer. In 3 lines it says, "May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and grant you peace." But it's in the interpretation that it's so interesting. There are 2 parts to the interpretation. One says that this must be said standing up. The cantor, he or she, must stand up while they're saying it, and they must stand with their arms up and outstretched. Is that familiar? When you see paintings of prayers from many hundreds of years ago, or even in relief, or let's think of Rembrandt, isn't the person who's giving the prayer always standing this way?